There's a phrase in Asia called same but different. At first glance, things look very similar to what we see in the West. When you look deeper, they're very different indeed. China has this in spades. It's the world's worst kept secret that China creates the biggest opportunity for Western, or actually any brand, for growth. Whether you're selling fizz in the can or goop in the jar, China has been the important market for you. After all, it has been growing 8% year on year for as long as I can remember. Western media in particular loves to portray China as an emerging economy, one with huge social and economic challenges for its population. Now don't get me wrong, there are big issues in China. Pollution being one, and two, there's millions of people who are living off $1 or $2 a day. But this Western view and this Western media view of China is just one side of the story, what's really happening in modern China right now. So let's talk some numbers. Compared to everything that you'll experience in Europe or America, we quickly learn that you almost need to add 3 zeros, seemingly, to get the China equivalent. And it's not surprising when you think about the population size. A staggering 1.35 billion people currently live in China. And it's even more staggering when you consider the one-child policy has been in place since 1979 and only just been relaxed. That population is spread amongst 3.7 million square miles and in 22 distinct provinces. Each one could be a European country. You then have over 600 million people online at any second of the day, and so it's no wonder that China will soon, if it's not already, become the world's biggest economy. Okay, so there's a lot of people and there's a lot of land. To truly understand China, you need to think about its cities. Now, fortunately for us, the Chinese government is very logical. So what it tends to do is put its cities in tiers. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. If you start to understand this tiering system, you're halfway to understanding the economic reality of China itself. Tier 1 cities tend to be the ones that we've all heard of. The Beijings, the Shanghais, the Guangzhous, the Shenzhens of this world. Historically, they've been the powerhouses of China's economic growth, both in terms of population, but also in terms of actual income of the people that are living there. Tier 2 cities are actually some of the most interesting. They tend to be the provincial capitals. Chengdu is a great example of this. In its own right, it has 14 million people and serves a population of 160 million. And finally, there's Tier 3 cities. Cities like Beihai, that quite frankly most Westerners have never even thought about visiting, let alone doing business with. But still, huge cities in their own right. And why is this all so important to understand? When most people go to China, they automatically think of Beijing and Shanghai and the job is done. That's like having a European strategy where you only focus on London or Paris. What about Madrid or Munich or Oslo, let alone Manchester or Monte Carlo? The smartest marketeers right now are actually focusing on Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. Why? It's because there's less competition and yet there's huge numbers still to gain. They're the ones that are getting the greatest returns as we speak today in China. So it's a pretty vast and complex country. And unsurprisingly, the media landscape is also different. It is the one place on planet Earth that the Silicon Valley kings do not dominate. You will never hear a Chinese person talking about Googling something or updating their Facebook status. Mainly because of the Chinese restrictions by the government, it's the Silicon Dragons that dominate the marketplace. The two biggest players being Tencent and Alibaba. In a market so vast with a relatively cheap labour force, it's not unsurprising to see the pace of change that happens in China. As a rule of thumb, things happen quicker, almost 2 or 3 times quicker than we see in the West. Take for example Weibo. Only 12 months ago it was the #1 social platform, the Twitter equivalent of China. 12 months later, it's struggling. It may be hard to swallow, but the West has a lot to learn from China. The pace at which China brands and businesses micro-innovate is something the West could learn from, and they'll be more successful as a result. So this may seem quite overwhelming. Like anything worth doing properly, the key is local knowledge and local research. Your best laid global plans may seem right to you, but I can guarantee they probably won't work in China, or if they are working, they'll probably be ignored by the local team. So the best 2 bits of advice I was ever given when moving into China or working with the Chinese teams was 1, listen with 2 ears and speak with 1 mouth, and 2, build from the ground up rather than the top down. Just following these 2 basic simple ideas, you're more likely to create some work that's very effective rather than something that looks great for your show reel back in the US or Europe. Lastly, don't underestimate the local competition. China has been a graveyard for many great brands and businesses that thought they knew best. You may have heard of Xiaomi, the mobile handset manufacturer that's taking on Samsung in its own game. You may have heard of Hisense that now has 1/3 of its revenues coming out of China and is really heading towards Europe right now. And of course Lenovo, that actually acquired IBM's PC division and now is basically playing against the big guys like the Apples and the Dells of this world in their backyard. So to summarize, 1. Think of China as a continent of cities rather than one single country. 2. Build your business and your ideas from the ground up rather than the top down. And 3. Look over your shoulder. Now actually look in front of you, because the Chinese brands are coming, they're coming to Europe and they're coming to America now. In the next episode, we're going to explore the wonderful world of social and mobile and how that is changing in the Asia landscape.